this incredible universe that has been around for so long. There's really an infinite number of stories to tell.
Today, executive producer Alex Kurtzman stops by to talk about Star Trek Discovery's final season and the state of the Star Trek universe. We'll also check out this season's incredible costumes. Stick around for that and more in the Ready Room. Hey nerds, I'm Will Wheaton, and this is The Ready Room, your official behind-the-scenes hub for the Star Trek universe. A new season of Star Trek always means a fantastic new wardrobe, so later, costume designer Anthony Tran will show us a few of Discovery's new looks. The forecast calls for heavy spoilers ahead, so I am calling for a black alert. If you haven't seen this week's episode titled Whistle Speak, stream it on Paramount Plus, then race back here for all the unclouded information you can weather. I'm a dad. Before we get to that, I'll be talking to Star Trek Discovery creator and executive producer Alex Kurtzman about the show's final season and the impact it's made on the Star Trek universe. Control room, engage. Alex, thank you so much for being here today. It's great to see you.
Thank you so much for having me, Will. I'm really glad to be here.
We're in such a different place now as a show than we were 5 years ago when Discovery began her mission. Are there some things that stand out for you that are particularly memorable that you would like to just kind of call out in this moment?
In no particular order and off the top of my head, I think the launch of the show was so intense for everybody because we were obviously bringing Star Trek back after a long time. And the expectation that everybody had was so huge. And so the sort of the terror of wanting to make sure we lived up to that, both as fans, but also as the people who had to deliver, was a lot. And I think I look back on the first year and I see so many big, bold swings, you know, some of which I think were amazingly successful. Others I think we learned a lot from. But I do feel like at every turn, we kept refining and tightening our storytelling. And for me, by the time you're in season 2 and Captain Pike shows up and the whole search for the Red Angel and obviously the time jump, I remember working through those story points in such a visceral way because by jumping forward, we were freeing ourselves from canon, and then suddenly we were free to write a whole new story for them. And the question of what does it look like in the 32nd century, and how do we tell that story, and how does it still feel like Star Trek? Like those were such huge pivot points. And then obviously getting into season 3 and having to deliver on the promise of the end of season 2. You know, I mean, I can go through each season and tell you what about each season was amazing, but it was one of the greatest, casts I've ever worked with, just to a person. Everybody was so dedicated and so in love with their job, and you felt that every day. And, as you know better than anybody, there's always the old adage that, your cast is your family and that you're a big family together. And it just was so true.
That sort of feeds into my next question. Creating television has changed so much since we were doing it back in the 80s and 90s. And it's everything from the style of storytelling to the technology that is available to us today. So yeah. You helped pull together this phenomenal creative team behind the scenes. I just want you to talk a little bit about what they mean, how you found them, and what some of their contributions have been.
Obviously, having had a background in both features and television, it was very clear to me that the line between movies and TV was blurring now completely, and that what you could do on television was much closer to what we've been able to do on features. And so, but in order to do that, you need people who can technically bring that to the game and do it on a television budget and on a television schedule. So it's in many ways much, much more challenging because you have more time and you have more money when you're making a movie. So a lot of it was bringing in, people I was very familiar with, who I'd worked with for a very long time. Jason Zimmerman, for example, he and I go way back to before Discovery. And, given the visual effects component on these shows, and if you look at season 1 of Discovery and you look at season 5 of Discovery, you can see how radically the technology evolved in those 5 years. Forget about what we're doing now on Picard and Strange New Worlds and what we're about to do on Section 31 and Starfleet. Like, the technology evolves so fast. So you need people who really know how to do that and who know how to bring that cinema to television without losing what's most important about television, which is the small, intimate details in the way that we love the characters.
Tunde has some wonderful choices when he moves the camera around. He doesn't overdo it. I feel like it is telling me, I'm letting you know how the characters feel right now.
Tunde is a unicorn. I mean, honestly, he's a unicorn. He has this extraordinary ability to know how to move the camera in an amazing, dynamic way, but it's never at the expense of the characters. He's always going for the emotion of the scene. Always. You know, he always surprises you with how he moves the camera. He's not giving you sort of, you know, random tricks. He's actually telling you a story. And we talk about that a lot. You know, we talk about our favorite directors, and we talk about the fact that our favorite directors are the ones who pay attention to story and they move the camera accordingly. And that's what he does.
I had such a good time a couple of years ago. I got to go up to Toronto and I went to visit the sets. And one of the things that just really knocked me off my feet is in the area, in the entranceway to go in, are all these gorgeous costumes. All the beautiful, incredibly detailed costumes from Strange New Worlds, from Discovery. Anthony Tran is Discovery's costume designer. He is absolutely one of the best in the business. We have a little video package that we have put together featuring him and his behind the scenes team, showing some of the amazing work that they have done this season. So here is a quick behind the scenes peek at some of this season's stunning costumes.
Being the costume designer of Star Trek Discovery Season 5 has been great. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster. There's always a lot going on. Every episode they go somewhere new, and so getting to kind of create new worlds in Trek is always exciting. So talking about Kamau, our first episode, it's inspired by Tuareg and desert kind of Bedouin tribes, but also looking at the hill tribes that are kind of in the remote parts of Asia, being inspired by their textiles that are usually hand-worked and embroidered, but knowing that this was future forward, doing that with printing instead. So the fabric started off as one color. We then pulled some of the color out, dyed in a darker color so it feels very, very modeled and aged, and actually then screen printed on top of that a darker color just to give it a lot of depth. Our textile artists actually went in and painted sand into everything.
Could have just said hello. You could have just left us the hell alone.
Is it vain to say that I really like my own costume? I put that outfit on, and all of a sudden, no one can mess with me.
Monlock, who in the script were described as kind of a futuristic Bonnie and Clyde. And so referencing kind of biker gangs as kind of the root inspiration. The idea is they're both couriers and they're probably jet setting around space and meeting different people and getting into trouble. And so all their costumes and things we really broke down. And so we started with this kind of harness that we made that started off brand new. We started breaking into it. The same thing with the shirt that we printed on top of, the gloves and all that. So it felt that they'd really kind of been in it. Locke, knowing that he was a Breen from the beginning and trying to nod to that. We look at the tubing that we also used in our Breen as kind of the idea of this kind of coolant refrigeration thing. All of his seams are all kind of diagonal, which again was meant to kind of give a subtle nod to the Breen, as was this kind of grid texture that comes from the Deep Space Nine Breen. And then the leather jacket itself is all kind of stacked to feel kind of like plates, moving plates. So looking at episode 506, we're in Halemno, and the concept of Halemno was that there is no status. And so the idea came about then to kind of put everyone in shades of brown. So knowing that it was a pre-war planet and being inspired by the Bronze Age and cavemen and all the fabrics we tried to use were natural fibers, so it's a lot of cottons, linen, silks. So in terms of some of the dye techniques we're using, there is shibori. So we basically first hand sew it, block off some areas, dye it, and then pull the threads out. And that's how some of these resist areas kind of remain, which we use both on Tilly and on Burnham. All of these are basically hand braided like you would braid hair. So this is 4 out of probably about 60 or 70 costumes that we built.
I loved the costumes for Halemno. I thought they were so cool. Anthony is so lovely. He's just really creative, and I love to see where he gets his inspiration from.
You look beautiful.
Alex, you have been with Discovery from the very beginning. The show has evolved from its early stages, and I feel like one of the big inflection points in establishing Discovery's ultimate identity was when Michelle Paradise came in to be your showrunner. Would you talk a bit about the show's evolution and about Michelle's contributions?
There was a lot of changeover in the first season. It was very clear to me that some of the things that had been done needed to be redone, and some of the things that had been done were working. Michelle at the time I think she was like a supervising producer on the show, but it was very clear to me that she had all the things that I needed in a great partner. She was extraordinarily organized. She was very, very meticulous. And I could tell that she was going to fill in all the blanks for my deficiencies, you know, that she was going to like really, you know, be paying attention to details so that I could focus on other things. Because sometimes as a single showrunner with a show of this size, it's so radically huge that it's difficult to hold on to everything. And, you know, how great is it to be able to find somebody who isn't a showrunner when you meet them and say, I see in you the potential for this beautiful thing, and I want to help you get there. And so that has been a real joy for me.
Because we are at the end of Discovery, I think you can pass on this, but you could safely reveal if you wanted to. Were there ever any pitches that came to you that you thought, I'd like to do that, but I can't fit it in? Was there anything you wanted to do that you didn't?
There's always ideas that you start out with that as the season begins to break itself, you realize like, the story's gravitating toward a particular place, and as much as I love this idea, it doesn't feel like we're going to be able to service it well anymore. And I think part of what you want to do is not be precious about dropping those ideas, because sometimes those ideas can hold you back, you know? So, I mean, I can't think of a specific one, but I can tell you that every season was littered with ideas that we ended up dropping because you know, the whole point of the first month is like, you're blue skying it. You're just imagining everything. And wouldn't it be great if we did this? And wouldn't it be great if we do that? But then as you start to hone in, you can't do all those ideas. And so the question is, which ones can we do and which ones can we service correctly? And which ones are right for the particular story that we're telling?
Of course, this season's story continues in next week's episode, and I have an exclusive clip to get us all pumped up. Check it out.
Hey, come on, hands off the jacket.
Look, you are not supposed to be here.
Yeah, I heard Monolaka beaming over.
Access is restricted. No one in or out without the Admiral's okay.
They may know things we don't about the Clutron or what we'll find at the end of it. I've spent more time with Mole than anyone, so maybe I can get her to talk.
Report said she nearly killed you on the Enterprise.
But she didn't.
So, lots of trust there.
At least let me try.
Last time I saw you, also a personal situation, you fired on Discovery with photon torpedoes and set off an isolated weapon.
And I've been working to make things right ever since.
That doesn't mean you're not a security risk.
Okay, Commander. Book has been instrumental in this mission so far.
If we need help during our debrief, I'll find you.
While Discovery is wrapping up, the Star Trek universe is expanding at an incredible rate right now. We've got Starfleet Academy, Section 31, Lower Decks, Strange New Worlds. Have you thought about that? Out of Discovery comes all of these shows, and here you are.
It's such an incredible gift because the truth is that when we started Discovery, I wasn't thinking about that. I was just thinking about making a great show. And I fell so deeply in love with Discovery and with the process of making it. And I spent a lot of time that first season really kind of meditating on, you know, this incredible universe that has been around for so long and how much more can be done with it. How many amazing stories there are to tell. There's really an infinite number of stories to tell. I only want to make another Star Trek show if there's something special to say. I don't want to do it just to do more. I think that would be a huge disservice to Star Trek. It would be a huge disservice to the fans. And I think the fans would feel it instantaneously. They would know this is not authentic, because if there's one thing that Trek fans know, it's authenticity. So for me, it's really just about figuring out a way to make sure that we take our time, we're deliberate, we're thoughtful, and we deliver on the promise of something different every time.
I completely agree with you. Alex, thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for the gift of your incredibly valuable time. I deeply appreciate it.
Thank you.
Next week, Elias Toufexis and Eve Harlow, who play Locke and Maul, will be here to dive deep into Season 5, Episode 7, Erica. Until then, I'm Will Wheaton. Live long and prosper.